Welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Phil Arno. This time of year, voting and politics starts to take effect. Whether it's a local race, a state race, or something national, getting out and voting is one of our unique privileges in this country. It's something that is very, very important. But most races that people vote for are high publicity type races. They're county executive, they're county clerk, they're sheriff, or they're state senators. There's a lot of politics that people are often exposed to, ads and politicking and town halls and so on. One race that people don't really think about as much as some of the others is very ironic, because this is a position that's probably one of the closest positions to the people actually in the towns and cities. And that's, in this particular case, I'm talking about a town justice. A race for town justice is not something that we think about a lot, because candidates usually don't get out there and involve themselves in politics. That's something that justices are not supposed to do. They're supposed to be basically in line with the law, not in line with a particular party. We're going to today talk to a candidate for Amherst Town Justice, and that candidate is Chris McMaster. He's a lawyer in Western New York, and we're just going to talk a little bit about the responsibilities of town justice, some of the finer points of what they have to do or take into consideration when they're doing their job. Can you tell me a little bit about the duties of a town justice? What kind of cases come before a town justice, and how it may be different from other jurisdictions?
Well, a town court, such as the town of Amherst, is a court of limited jurisdiction, meaning that it has limits on its jurisdiction in terms of civil cases and criminal cases. Criminal cases being violations and misdemeanors, and some of the preliminary proceedings with respect to felonies. Civil cases, we're talking about small claims court. Those involve controversies up to $5,000. Lately, within the past couple of years, town courts used to handle residential landlord-tenant matters. At least in Erie County, residential landlord-tenant matters were divested from the local courts, and they go down to the hub court in downtown Buffalo. But a town court should still handle commercial evictions. And then there's the, maybe everybody's most famous and first brush with the law is vehicle and traffic. And you get hailed into a town court to face some vehicle and traffic charges.
Well, tell me a little bit about your background. You are a lawyer. Not all town justices in New York State have to be lawyers. And I think, what I read was there's 1,800 town justices throughout the state, and only about 700 of them are actually lawyers.
Yeah, that's true. For town justice, you don't have to be a lawyer. I am a lawyer. I'm in my 25th year of practice. I've headed up my own firm for the past 20 years. And there's a varied background that I bring to the table. Some criminal, transactional work, but a lot of litigation work, especially business litigation as of late, which is an area that I excel in. But certainly I've been in practice before local courts, such as Town of Amherst Court, city courts, state Supreme Court, U.S. District Court, which is a federal court, and United States Bankruptcy Court.
Okay, well, town justice, like any other judge, has guidance, what the law says, what the law dictates. Whether it's the U.S. Constitution or the state constitution or local ordinances, what comes into play most when, on the level of town justice, What guidance do town justices have when making rulings?
The answer is all of the above. U.S. Constitution, particularly in criminal cases. But you get down to state statutes, you get down to procedural aspects, criminal procedure law. You get down to the penal law, you get down to vehicle and traffic law. And where interpretation is required, you can turn to a body of case law that comes along with and interprets those statutes. And but everything else is really applying the facts of the particular case to the law while balancing the rights of an individual with the rights of the community.
Well, in the most extreme cases, town justices can be dealing with felonies, with serious crimes, but only on the level of an arraignment, and then it goes to a higher court. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. An arraignment, and an arraignment, for those who don't know, is where charges against an accused are formally read to him or her, and that defendant enters a plea. Court could enter a plea for somebody, only for serious felonies, and we're typically talking about violent felonies. A town court could also establish bail. And that's been a hot topic lately. What I think you and your audience may like to know is that there is no such thing as bail for misdemeanors and violations. So, and bail reform has been this, hot potato over the past few years. That's what you need to know about a town justice court. But you're right. A felony is not going to be tried in a town court. It's going to have to go to a superior court, county court, or Supreme Court. But the bail that a town justice sets would follow that defendant unless it's somehow revised by that superior court.
Is there a limit to what bail can be assigned? It's basically dependent on the individual case and the violation or the felony that's been charged?
It's really up to the judge, up to and including holding a defendant without bail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the bail, we've done stories and shows about the no bail legislation that went through some years ago, and the pluses and minuses of that. That's a whole different subject, and people have strong feelings about that. When it comes to the town justices, it's an elected office, but it's kind of an unusual situation because whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you're supposed to be apolitical when you're a town justice. So you may be running as an endorsed candidate from one party or the other, but you really aren't politicking. You're not campaigning as a candidate. Is that basically it?
You're campaigning. Let's take my example. I'm a Republican. I was endorsed by the Amherst Republican and Conservative committees, and I'm out there campaigning, yet what we're allowed to talk about is extremely narrow and delineated. And so we're out there. I'm out there knocking on doors, and we may talk about qualifications or who I am and sometimes educational background and things like that. Sometimes people want to engage us on national politics or controversial political figures, and as I tell them, they really have nothing to do with us, and you're trying to be polite when you're talking to people. Certainly you want to engage them, you'd like them to vote for you, but we don't have an opinion on tariffs, for example. We're never going to affect tariffs. in the town of Amherst, a town justice is not going to lower the taxes, for example. So, you know, those things we need to steer clear of.
You've practiced law for 25 years. You've had, I'm sure, a lot of experience in town courts.
Yes.
So when it comes to particular judges or justices in town courts, I'm sure personality comes into play a little bit in terms of how they handle things. What should people know about the differences in justices from one justice to another? They all have the same rules to follow in terms of the law. How much does personality or individual judgments come into play that may be different from one justice to another?
Well, I would say quite a bit, because our common experience is we've been told to be careful when driving through a certain town or municipality, because if you get a speeding ticket, the judge there is going to be tough on you. Maybe that's true. But I tend to think that is that judge's, if that's true, if that's that judge's particular approach to public service and protecting the community. And you may not think much of speeding, but you know, that can be dangerous and detract from quality of life. And but it's really up to the individual justice and, you know, their concept of justice writ large, which is pretty hard to define.
Okay. Well, we're out of time for this segment. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about what people might expect when they go into a town court, how they can conduct themselves that maybe are the most advantageous ways to present before a justice. It'll be an interesting, informative direction that we'll go into after this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Big Picture. My guest is Chris McMaster, and he's running for town justice in the town of Amherst. The discussion that we've had is you know, about the law and about, you know, the political parties and justices, and how it's kind of a different race than most elected officials. You're not really running as a Republican or a Democrat per se. You're running on the fact that you're going to be objective, you're going to be knowledgeable as a justice, and impartial. That's basically it in a nutshell, right?
True.
Okay, well, you know, what should people who are voting for a town justice, you know, rather than just vote a party line or vote, you know, haphazardly, or don't vote at all because they don't know, you know, the person who's running, what kind of considerations would you suggest for people who are voting for town justice in their area?
Well, tough for me to suggest what's important to a person. Is certainly experience should be up there, legal experience. I often highlight the fact, and I think people would be interested to know, and I think some people are rather attracted to the fact that I'm not a politician. I've never run for anything before. I haven't been hanging around the party to see what may fall to me. I decided to run this year. There was an opportunity where Cara Biscaglia won election to Erie County Family Court. The position was vacant for a day or so, and the town board appointed my opponent to act as justice until the election in November. But I'm a political neophyte. I'm not a professional. I'm not part of a political machine, and I think there are a great number of people out there who might find that attractive. in addition to, 25 years of experience and varied legal background and, no disciplinary history. I haven't been disciplined by a court or the grievance committee, for example. I enjoy an excellent reputation in the legal community at large. And, I think people may appreciate that perspective and that kind of different set of criteria or non-criteria in terms of lack of political experience.
And as a lawyer, have you had many clients, many cases that went before town court?
Yes. I have to say it depends. Over the years, there have been different things. For example, in a town court 10 years ago, if you were to ask me, well, what do you appear most on? I would say evictions, residential evictions. Those, at least in Erie County, those have been divested from our Erie County Justice Courts. There was an occasion to run a commercial eviction in a town justice court about a year ago, and that case settled. So we resolved that before we were going to try that, but that would have been tried in a town justice court, not Amherst, but another justice court close by. And, if you're running a corporate practice, invariably, you're going to be in there, typically at a night term of the court, for vehicle and traffic matters, because your corporate clients got a speeding ticket, or their kid got a speeding ticket, something like that. So, and then when I was a much younger lawyer, we did some criminal, I did some assigned counsel work, particularly. Those were heavier duty crimes up in Niagara County. So we've handled some minor criminal in local courts, but it has been a huge part of my practice. But when you start out and you're working for other people, you take the assignments that they give to you.
Well, on the level of town court, or any court for that matter, in your experience, which is many years now, in your opinion, what is the difference between one judge and another judge, or one justice and another justice, in terms of what makes one good or better than another? I know this is subjective, but what do you look for in a town justice?
Well, I think what I look for in any justice, let's stay away from, one better than the other, but let's speak to qualities that anybody would want in any judge in any court, which is patience, fairness, impartiality, the ability to listen fully to both sides, some competence and scholarship in terms of knowing the law and applying the facts to the law, and just, fairness overall.
Well, if you're a citizen who is, for some reason, required to get into a town court to defend yourself, or for whatever reason, what do you suggest that they consider when it comes to presenting themselves in front of a justice? What makes somebody more likely, or to be successful in just assuming that they have a good case? They're not lawyers and they don't have a lot of experience in preparing. What kind of suggestions or advice can you give somebody who's going before a justice but really doesn't have the experience?
Yeah. Number one, dress appropriately. Don't show up in a t-shirt and jeans. There is a respect that we all have to show to the court. And by the same token, a court should be treating everybody else with respect too. But this is kind of a two-way street. dress appropriately. But let's take some different phases here. If you're in on a criminal charge, I suggest you appear with counsel. And if you can't afford counsel, let the court know that. And, you know, you may well qualify for some kind of appointed counsel. That's one thing. Vehicle and traffic laws. Unless you can really show that you weren't speeding or did the infraction that you're accused of doing, my suggestion is talk to the town prosecutor and see if you might not be able to plead that charge down to a parking ticket or something that you can live with, that, you know, you may well pay a fine. But if you feel that you have an absolute defense, you're going to end up trying that. And if you want to try it yourself, you can give it a go, but you know, those are kind of difficult for the layperson to do on their own. What the layperson is often in town court to do, and often does themselves, are small claims cases. And there they should show up as prepared as possible. If there are documents, make multiple copies of documents. Same things with photographs. If they're important to the case, be prepared to give those to the judge, be prepared to give those to the other side, and lay out the facts of your case as best you can. The judge will know that you're not a professional. The judge may pop up and ask some questions of his or her own to try and draw out facts necessary to decide the case. So there's three different phases for a town court.
You know, if you're in court for a traffic violation, it's, I guess there's, I don't know whether it's called judicial notice or whatever, but typically an officer testifying is given more credence than a defendant testifying. You need to have some kind of a case to present that indicates that you didn't do what you were accused of doing. It's not just word against word.
Yeah, well, let's take the case of speeding. Let's just remember something. There may be radar, but a police officer is also an expert in judging how fast you're going just by his or her observation. So that's kind of a tough thing to overcome most times. There could be scenarios. I'm thinking of a vehicle and traffic we beat in the city of Buffalo where the client was pulled over, but the police officers were in no way in a position to see what they alleged this person did. And we drew that out at a hearing, and the judge dismissed that. Maybe there's a circumstance like that. Maybe there's a traffic control device, a sign that's not high enough from the drivable surface such that you didn't need to observe that. Things like that. But for the most part, a litigant with a vehicle and traffic charge against them has a tough road to try and win dismissal of that charge.
You know, just as an example, if somebody is accused of going through a stop sign, for instance, and they say or they believe that they stopped and then it was the intersection, the view of where they were, it was blocked from wherever the officer was, so they didn't actually see them stop, and then they went through the stop sign. If they were to like take pictures and document, you know, what they believe were mitigating, is that something a justice would look at?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. That would be very helpful.
Okay, all right. So, you know, Justice, last question. You know, Judge Penny does a show here. She's well known throughout the area, and for years she was a judge on several levels. And I noticed in talking with her personally and, you know, doing shows, that as a judge, she was kind of bound by a a code that prevented her from commenting on certain things, whether it's politics or crimes that were under consideration and litigation and whatever. What regulates what a judge can talk about?
Well, there are rules concerning judicial ethics, both really for candidates at this point, those kick in, and those for sitting judges. But a justice position is supposed to be an apolitical position. We're not supposed to delve into politics and talk like that. And certainly we should not be partisan on the bench. If somebody from the other party comes before us, that can't be a consideration in whatever the matter is up for consideration.
Okay. Well, this has been interesting. It's something that people don't think about often when they're going into the voting booth. And hopefully we've given you something to think about and maybe educated you a little bit about town justices, the level of cases that they handle. And I just want to repeat what I've said so often on this show, and that is voting is your most, well, the best privilege that we all have as Americans. Getting out to vote, that's your interaction with the powers that be. They answer to you as a citizen, okay? And if you don't go out and vote, then don't be complaining about New York State or taxes or laws or bail or any of the things that you see in the news so often. Voting, it all starts with that. It all starts with going out and doing your part as a citizen. Anyway, I'd like to thank Chris McMaster, and if you want any further information on Chris or his candidacy, we're going to put information on the screen where you can go to his website or maybe make a phone call and get some information. Again, thank you for being part of the show, Chris, and we will see you next time on The Big Picture. I want to thank you very much for watching WBBZ. We're your local TV station, and we'll see you next time on The Big Picture.